So, as usual, I am quite a bit behind schedule as far as filming and editing video, partly because I'm bad at making schedule, partly because my personal life has been giving me a lot of stress. So we're going to do this video without a script. That means that I'm not going to go entirely in depth, and I might also get things wrong. Usually when I get like loads of things wrong, it's when I'm not on a script. Except when I'm on a script, I usually get a lot of pronunciations wrong. Like a lot. Anyhow, let's go to our favorite flat earther, Jeranism.
Of course, this video is titled Scientific American Cosmology Has Some Big Problems, and no one actually highlights that better than Michio Kaku. So let's start by hearing him out, and let's hear what he's got to say about the current problems in cosmology.
I want to start off by first making it clear that what he's talking about is cosmology. Cosmology is, in essence, the study of the origin and formation of the universe as a whole, which is totally different, not totally, but it's different from astronomy, which is the study of the observable world around us. The difference being that it is far easier to observe and test the way things are around us right now, whereas the formation of the universe is a process that, for the most part, we cannot directly observe, especially when you go way back in time to the origin of the universe. This is something that we really can't observe at all because of how far back it was and how little remnants of it we have to observe. We can still observe other processes that were to happen later on, like the formation of stars, or the death of stars for that matter, formations of things and stuff, because we have and do observe things forming in the galaxy around us all the time. So we do have a very good idea of how, say, stars form, how galaxies form, the life cycle of a star, things that I just mentioned a second ago because I'm great at speaking. But the whole concept and study of cosmology, just by its very nature, invites more questions than it can answer thoroughly and satisfactorily. Hopefully he doesn't say that this huge issue with cosmology applies to these other scientific fields. And hopefully he recognizes exactly what this issue is and exactly what it means for us, and not stretch it out for more than what it really is. Let's hope so. But we're dealing with conspiracy theorists, so we'll see.
Usually in science, if we're off by a factor of 2 or a factor of 10, we call that horrible. We say something's wrong with the theory. We're off by a factor of 10. However, in cosmology, we're off by a factor of 10 to the 120. That is 1 with 120 zeros after it. This is the largest mismatch between theory and experiment in the history of science.
So he's talking there about the largest mismatch in the history of science, talking about the difference between the tests and the theories, of course.
Okay, that's great, Jaren, but exactly what tests and exactly what theory was he talking about? Because he gave us a number, a relatively specific number, so I'm assuming that applies to a certain thing. I don't know the answer to this question. I don't even know exactly where this original quote is from. If I can find it, then I'll add something in post right here. Okay, looking into it a bit further, I think this is what he was talking about. The cosmological constant problem. And he's right, this is a pretty big issue, and it seems to still be an issue. The thing is, this is the far edge, a little bit past the extent of our knowledge. This is a sort of issue we have in science when we know there's something that we don't know. By no means does this mean that the entirety of relativity is wrong, nor does this mean that there's no gravity or whatever. Like I said before, cosmology is an imperfect science, and this is a product of that. There are a number of proposed solutions, one of which may be right, maybe none of them are. But by no means does this mean that the whole of cosmology should be disregarded. But for right now, while I'm currently recording this, I looked it up a little bit and couldn't find a whole lot of information. It was from the principal, and the information I found on it was so vague.
This is the one that kind of turned the page for me as a former science believer, thinking that everything science said must be true. It's what I was taught in school. For instance, I can construct you a spherically symmetrical universe with the Earth at its center, and you cannot disprove it based on observations. You can only exclude it on philosophical grounds. In my view, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. What I want to bring into the open is the fact that we are using philosophical criteria in choosing our models. A lot of cosmology tries to hide that. So really, when you break down that quote and you realize what he's saying, and you understand that cosmology is a science, and I believed in science, and I think science tells the truth, and would never hide anything, but this right here is from a famous cosmologist. That should be an eye-opener for anyone. Why is cosmology, a science, trying to hide something from me?
Okay, so you used to be a science believer. You used to believe in this whole science deal. Okay. So you find an issue with cosmology in an out-of-context quote, then you disbelieve all science. It's all wrong. There's this one field that isn't exactly what we think of it, so astronomy, throw it out the window. Physics, throw that out the window as well, because cosmology got us all messed up. Then who's to say that the world is round? But if you were to look at this quote critically, not even necessarily skeptically, just critically, this doesn't immediately mean that there's no proof of gravity, there's no proof of the curvature of the Earth, there's no proof of this and that. This means a very specific thing.
All right, so this article was from April 30th, 2019. It says cosmology has some big problems. So let's read this article, and hopefully people can start to see what I'm seeing and what a lot of us have been trying to say for many years now. There is a problem in cosmology.
Okay, from here, Jeranism goes into an article in the Scientific American called Cosmology Has Some Big Problems. And that's essentially all this video is him reading this article with commentary here and there. I'm not going to force you to sit through Jaron reading this entire thing. I'm going to go through some of the more, I think, important points. And I'm basically just going to go to the points where he says something that I think is significant.
Born out of a cosmic explosion 13.8 billion years ago, the universe rapidly inflated and then cooled. This well-known story is usually taken as a self-evident fact, despite the relative lack of empirical evidence, and despite a steady crop of discrepancies arriving with observations of the distant universe.
Okay, see, that's a very good start. It starts out pointing out the idea of the Big Bang, saying that pretty much everybody knows about it. Lots of people think that is for a sure fact, but the reality is, this is merely one of our better guesses. We don't exactly know the exact origin of the universe. Exactly what I've been trying to say. So from here on out, I'd like you to keep in mind that this started talking about the origin of the universe. This says nothing about, say, the formation of planets, of stars, all these sorts of things, which we do regularly observe.
For a crucial function of theories such as dark matter, dark energy, and inflation is not to describe known empirical phenomenon, but rather to maintain the mathematical coherence of a framework itself while accounting for discrepant observations. Fundamentally, they are names for something that must exist insofar as the framework is assumed to be universally valid. A lot of things we're going to see like that in this article. Assumptions have to be, if your foundations are wrong, what happens after that? Let's continue.
Up to this point, Jaron has read a decent portion of the article. I skipped over it because he doesn't say anything, and, well, I'll let you read the article for yourself. I'll link it in the description. If I can remember to do so, I have a terrible memory. It doesn't state anything specific, but it says that there were some observations that disprove these couple ideas that we do have. So why do we have it in the first place? And we're where we are now. Though I was under the impression that we have made observations that supported the existence of dark matter, that's besides the point. But notice what the article said. Insofar as the framework is assumed to be universally valid. And Jaron takes this to mean, oh, they're just assuming everything, all of it. What Jaron is trying to say is that scientists just assume something to be true, and then they just preach it as biblical truth, so to speak. What you're looking at right here is the opposite of that. What you're looking at right here is our ideas changing to fit the facts. Here's what flat earthers do, though. They hear a little bit of conspiracy theorist ranting about the shape of the earth. Then they become convinced about this conspiracy theory, which may or may not be completely justified, may or may not have sound evidence, and then rehash other things, preach it as gospel truth, and then find every single possible way you can to dismiss all the mountains of evidence against you. I mean, just ask a flat earther about the NASA images of the shape of the earth. They've heard about it. They've heard the argument, oh, we take pictures of the shape of the earth, but they'll ignore it. They will dismiss it. They'll say it's conspiracy, because they have to. That's what makes flat earth a conspiracy theory. When faced with direct evidence that they're wrong, they say, no, that evidence doesn't exist.
And it says it is a 7,000-mile flight, 12 hours and 40 minutes from Sydney to Santiago. But I don't think this flight ever takes off. This flight to from Auckland, I don't think either one of these two flights are real. They're just kind of there to keep guys like me from figuring this shit out.
Or no, you don't understand what you're talking about, or no, and perspective explains all of it.
The observations that anyone can make and the measurements that anyone can make are totally open to interpretation. There has not been any discovery along the way.
Instead of getting into a rut of the ideas we currently have and don't want to get rid of, we're not afraid to get rid of ideas we currently had in favor of new ideas based on new evidence and observations and what have you.
It is, of course, entirely plausible that the validity of general relativity breaks down much closer to our own home than at the edge of a hypothetical end of the universe. And if that were the case, today's multi-layered theoretical edifice of the Big Bang paradigm would turn out to be a confusing mix of fictional beasts invented to uphold a model, along with empirically valid variables mutually reliant on each other to the point of making it impossible to sort science from fiction, which is exactly what we've been saying for 4 years.
Yeah, great. You found something in a magazine article that seems to be exactly what you thought for 4 years, man. Do these guys know that they sound like conspiracy theorists? Anyhow, let's respond to what he's saying, shall we? In the article, it's talking about a mixture of concrete evidence, concrete observations, and fictional beasts. What exactly is he talking about here? Our current model of the origin of the universe is the Big Bang Theory. Not that Big Bang Theory that is an atrocity. No thank you. But as we make more and more observations, the Big Bang Theory alone, as it was, isn't sufficient enough to explain everything. Take, for instance, dark energy. From what I understand, I could be wrong, this is not my strong suit here, but we see the universe expanding, but at an accelerating rate, which we would not predict with the Big Bang Theory. We would see it at a decelerating rate. So we came up with this idea of dark energy, which it's not something that we believe exists as much as it is an idea that shows the discrepancy between our model and reality. If we found evidence of this dark energy, then it would explain why we were off. So in a sense, yes, this dark energy is made up. It is a fictional beast, something that we have not observed, but something that would explain away the theory and keep the Big Bang Theory, the currently accepted model. Is that a bad thing? Should we never have came up with the idea of dark energy ever? We should just see, oh, there's this discrepancy. We don't have an explanation for it, so let's scrap absolutely everything. Here's the thing. Even with the discrepancy of the accelerating expansion of the universe, the Big Bang Theory is still the best explanation we have for the origin of the universe. Again, this isn't coming from a scientist here, but neither is anything that Jeranism says. We can't have a for sure answer. And that's what the quotes earlier was talking about. This is a field of science where we really don't know much. We cannot know all the details. We cannot have a complete theory. We cannot explain everything, and not all of it adds up. We know that. But it still works better than any other model. Because for the most part, it is a working model, from what I understand. But this idea of go with the best guess until we have better is indeed philosophical, and is indeed not direct proof that the universe is as they say it is.
Today's space telescopes provide no direct view of anything. They produce measurements through an interplay of theoretical predictions and pliable parameters in which their model is involved every step of the way. Again, this is what has been being said for years. The framework literally frames the problem. It determines where and how to observe. And so, despite the advanced technologies and methods involved, the profound limitations to the endeavor also increase the risk of being led astray by the kind of assumptions that cannot be calculated.
And of course, after reading that, a conspiracy theorist has a field day. Because again, here's the thing. When reading something like this, a conspiracy theorist can easily say, oh, so they don't know anything. They're not measuring anything. They're just messing about with a whole bunch of numbers. They're coming up with stuff just out of nowhere, and then making machines based off of those assumptions, and then getting numbers, and then messing around with those numbers, and then fooling the general public into thinking that we can't fly over Antarctica, or that we really went to the moon. I don't know exactly how true this is, because the article doesn't go into any detail, and I honestly don't have any idea how to look any of this up. I'm pretty much just taking the article's word for it. What else would we do except take our best idea and make tests and observations based on that? Which, by the way, could potentially disprove the theory. We're not afraid of disproving it. I mean, I fail to understand how such a machine can be designed in a way that its measurements will only make sense if the Big Bang Theory is true. That will only make sense if we think of it in terms of this model or that model. These observations and measurements will only be made if we use it in the context of a certain model of cosmology. I don't understand. Any particular model of the universe will lead us to try to observe certain aspects that would be predicted by that model, and that's what we do, and that's how we find evidence that either supports or negates the idea. This is how we find evidence to the contrary of some of our ideas, you know? This is how we found out that there was no luminiferous ether, you know, all those hundreds of years ago, except flat earthers who still think there's luminiferous ether for no good reason.
Why? Because inflation theory relies on ad hoc contrivances to accommodate almost any data, and because its proposed physical field is not based on anything with empirical justification.
Well, I mean, sound like anyone you know?
And then sure enough, there it was.
It certainly looks to be the correct dimensions of the ISS. I believe that the craft that takes the pictures that can be found on the eoj.jsc website, well, those pictures are taken by a craft shaped like the ISS. That's what I believe. But do I believe that Mark Kelly and all the astronauts are actually inside said craft? No. No, I don't.
Right? Okay, I've been recording now for over an hour, but in conclusion, the uncertain nature of the origin of the universe is not in any way indication that we can disregard any and all science that shows that the world is round. Yes, I mean, I do think it should be a little bit more known to the general public that we cannot know for sure how the universe formed. But it doesn't mean there's no gravity. It doesn't mean that Einstein's work is for naught. And if you want to learn more in depth about science, you don't really go to a no-name author on just any old site. This is the sort of thing you do if you have a position and are looking for anything you could find to support it. Okay, so I guess now I have to end every video with a scripture because I said I would. F*** you, truck going by the street. At first I thought it was going to be funny because I knew there were things that I could cherry pick out of these things, but now I just don't know what to do. So let's go to the Book of Mormon. By the way, this Book of Mormon, the cover is upside down, but like the words are actually you can read this, right? But like the cover is printed upside down. I don't know. I doubt this has any collector's value, but if you have any information about that, let me know. But let's go to Ohnme, chapter 11, verse 5. Now the reckoning is thus: a C9 of gold, a Sion of gold, a Shum of gold, and a Limna of gold, a Sinum of silver, an Amnor of silver, an Ezram of silver, and an Onti of silver. A Sinum of silver is equal to a C9 of gold, and either for a measure of barley, and also for a measure of every kind of grain. Now the amount of Sion of gold was twice the value of a C9, and the Shum of gold was twice the value of a Sion, and a Limna of gold was the value of them all. And an Amnor of silver was as great as 2 Sinums, and an Ezram of silver was as great as 4 Sinums. And an Onti was as great as them all. Now this is the value of the lesser numbers of their reckoning. A shiblon is half of a sinum, therefore a shiblon is half of a measure of barley, and a shiblum is half of a shiblon, and a leah is half of a shiblum. Now this is their number according to their reckoning. Now an antion of gold is equal to 3 shiblons. I feel like I'm reading an episode of Rick and Morty right now. Well, that was fun. Again, tell me if you know anything about this upside-down cover copy of Book of Mormon, Doctrine and Covenants, and Pearl of Great Price. Probably not interesting, but I want to know. Thank you for watching. If you if you haven't subscribed, consider it.